Having a sports team to your own is one of the greatest privileges that a city can be bestowed upon. From the City of Angels to the ATL, some of the most iconic teams of all time have had inseparable connections to the cities in which they started. One of those cities is Seattle, and as one of their prized possessions, the Seattle Supersonics were one of the most storied franchises in the NBA, with 57 seasons under their belt and some of the most iconic colorways with their stunning green and yellow jerseys. This episode, though, is actually going to cover their other half, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Polarizing in many different ways, the Thunder have only been around for a relatively short time and took away that incredible sports team in Seattle to be moved to Oklahoma City in the 2008-2009 season. Even today, the jerseys still don't have the same appeal as their original counterparts, and many have voiced their wishes on bringing the Supersonics back, even with Adam Silver stating that the next expansion team will very likely be the Seattle Supersonics themselves. So, a young franchise that's almost a misfit compared to its legendary origins, well, what kind of all-time players could have possibly played there? Well, for one, there are some people who know and some people who don't, but the Thunder, as a franchise, have more MVPs than half of the NBA, and they've only been around as long as a high schooler. But let's take a deep dive into the history of the Oklahoma City Thunder and find out who is the greatest player in this young but already legendary franchise. Yo, what's up everybody, it's your boy 2KJ here, and today on the episode of Case for Franchise GOAT, we're going to be looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder and trying to figure out who is the greatest player in their history. If you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and turn on post notifications. But let's get to our GOAT pyramid and see what kind of players we're working with. Well, as expected, this list isn't as big as some of the other storied franchises we've seen. At the bottom, we have some fan favorites like Steven Adams and Nick Collison. The all-time tier is a bit more populated, as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Paul George, and Serge Ibaka fit into this category. For the final tier, we have the two players that fit into our category of the GOAT, and it's obviously the only two players who could have, and that is Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. But which one of them is the GOAT? This one might actually surprise you, but let's start from the beginning and find out there. Let's get it. Nick Collison is to the franchise what Udonis Haslem is for Miami. An absolute star for Kansas in the early 2000s, Nick Collison led the Jayhawks to back-to-back Final Fours and was a Big 12 Player of the Year his senior season in 2003. Now, he was another member of this stacked 03 draft, but Collison would be drafted with the 12th overall pick to the then Seattle Supersonics. He would have a couple of solid seasons there before they moved to Oklahoma City, where he would again keep up his stellar play for 14 seasons, and eventually find his name in the rafters as officially the first player to have their jersey retired for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Nice little fun fact there. But a lot like Haslem, Collison meant a lot to the city, and that's why he ends up on this list. And not necessarily because of his play. He was an alright bench player. He wasn't really exceptional, or he wasn't an all-star by any means, but he's one of those players that is the heart and soul of a franchise, especially a franchise that had moved away from its storied origins to a new place in Oklahoma City. So that's why I have to put Nick Collison on this list, out of straight respect for another Haslem-type player, somebody who is integral to the franchise, and for that, he will always have a place on this list. The next guy up is Steven Adams, and he is also a fan favorite player, mostly for his contributions in the post-Kevin Durant era. Hailing from New Zealand, Adams was highly touted out of high school and college, playing for the Wellington Saints in Pittsburgh. He won Big East Preseason Rookie of the Year and Big East All-Rookie honors in his one season, averaging 7.2 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, and 2 blocks, which obviously led him to being drafted in the first round with the 12th pick in the 2013 NBA Draft. Now, in his first season, Adams played well, albeit sparingly, with only 14.8 minutes on average due to playing behind Serge Ibaka, who was the starter at the time. However, he did earn All-Rookie second-team honors, and his next year he had a huge jump in both playing time and stats. He had 25.3 minutes on average and averaged 7.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks, proving to be a fantastic second big and proving that he could be an important piece on the squad if you only gave him a couple more minutes. His next year he had similar production, but the eventual trade of Serge Ibaka in 2016 opened up the lane for Adams to show what he was really made of. As the starting big of the team, he was an entirely different player, averaging 11.3 points per game and 7.7 rebounds and 1.1 blocks, becoming one of the fan-favorite players for the franchise in a time where they had just lost one of their most beloved players. He was one of the rocks of that team, and while Adams was never an all-star for the franchise, he was basically a superstar to the fans. And he has his host of iconic moments and will always have a legacy as one of the best big men in franchise history. Now, moving on to the next tier, we have a player who really hasn't done much for the franchise in terms of legacy-wise, but I have to put him on this list because, let's not kid ourselves, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an absolute menace on the court. The guy is fantastic. He is one of the stars of the league, and in the next 5 years, he will 100% be one of the faces of the league. I'm sure he kind of already is now. He's growing into that role. He had an incredible first game of the season, and he's a player that finds himself on this list because of pure potential. In the short time that we've seen him in the blue and orange, he has proved himself to be one of the most elite young players in the game. He got his start with the Los Angeles Clippers, and he was actually traded for another player that's going to end up on this list in Paul George. He was the 11th pick out of Kentucky, and he immediately established himself as a prime piece of that Clippers young core, which is exactly why he was pried away in that Paul George trade. And this would actually be a blessing in disguise for him because it gave him the opportunity to be the number one option and franchise star of a team desperately needing one after the breakup of KD and Russ. Sensing that his game needed to be taken to an entirely different level, he went from averaging 10.8 points in his rookie season to 19 points per game in his sophomore year. I mean, the kid could flat out play, and his next 3 years would show a progression of good to great to excellent to straight up arguably top 5 in the league for his position. Let's not kid ourselves. He ranked as ESPN as the 8th best player in the league right now in the 2022-23 season, and he averaged 31.4 points per game on 51% shooting, to go along with 4.8 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 1.6 steals, earning his first All-Star appearance and All-NBA first-team selection. A 6th-year player being 4th in scoring in the league is crazy. I mean, this kid can only get better with time, and having, in my opinion, I think the Thunder will do a pretty good job of being a dark horse this year. I think they might have a Kings-type run a la last year, but due to his young age and already huge potential, he has to go on the all-time tier for this list because there is no way he won't end up on here. I mean, the kid's incredible, and I think that the Thunder might, don't quote me on this, but quote me on this if it goes well. I think the Thunder might shock some people this year. In the next couple of years, I think they might shock some folks, but he can definitely make a run for GOAT in the franchise. He would have to win an MVP, but we'll see. Let me not get too ahead of ourselves, but Shai Gilgeous has to be on this list because of that one thing. Now, speaking about important pieces, let's talk about the 2010s Thunder, because like we all know, that is the most iconic Thunder squad there is, and Serge Ibaka is one of the most iconic pieces on that squad. Originally getting his start playing in Europe, he would be drafted by the Thunder with the 24th pick in the 2008 NBA draft. Now, Serge was a very raw prospect. I mean, the guy left for Spain at 17 and taught himself Spanish. He was elite by all measures, and scouts believed that. They thought that this guy would be a perfect piece for the Young Thunder squad, and after playing one last year in Spain, he joined the team and showed them just that. In his full first season of NBA action, he would prove quite effective in limited minutes, averaging 6.3 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks in only 18 minutes, pretty much proving that this guy had something. And his block averages actually led all rookies. And in that playoffs against the Lakers, he would not only average 2 blocks a game in that 6-game series, but also have 7 blocks in game 2. I mean, this early success was a great sign to come, but it did not show just how much he would improve, because he would keep improving little by little until it culminated in a 3.6 block per game average in the lockout-shortened 2012 season. Although he would lose out on Defensive Player of the Year to Tyson Chandler, he would get the chance to play in the NBA Finals in an eventual 5-game defeat by the Miami Heat. Now, Ibaka would continue to improve his game, upping his scoring averages as well to 13.2 points per game, to go along with 7.7 rebounds and a league-leading 3 blocks a game. He would repeat this feat for a 4th time in a row in 2013, and once again have an average of over 2 blocks a game in 2014. His last year would coincide with the final year of the Durant-Westbrook duo, and would eventually be traded in the 2016 offseason. But his defensive prowess with the Thunder makes him one of the all-time players for this franchise, and again, one of the all-time players for his position in this young franchise. Now, the last player on this list is Paul George, and this one might come as a bit of a shock to most, as he only played in 2 seasons for the franchise, a total of 156 games. And now I know what you're saying, how does he show up but not James Harden? Well, that's because people forget just how elite Paul George was in his 2 years with the Thunder. I mean, let's be honest, the guy would have had a very reasonable shot at winning MVP in the 2018-2019 season if he could have stayed completely healthy. Not only that, but I do think that if he had more time to play with the Thunder squad, there's a chance they could have done something special. In his first season, he put up 21.9 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and 2 steals. But in his second season, he completely flipped the switch, having 28 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, 4.1 assists, and 2.2 steals. And although it amounted to 2 heartbreaking first-round losses, I do think that this version of Paul George might have been him at his most elite. And that's why I want him on this list instead of someone like James Harden, who played his most elite years as a Houston Rocket. And obviously that is the end of our 2 lower tiers. And let's get into the meat and potatoes of what exactly this episode is about. Who is better, Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook? Let's start off with Kevin Durant. By all accounts, Kevin Durant is one of the most elite scoring players to ever touch a basketball. And although he got his start by wearing the green and yellow of the Seattle Supersonics, he would make some of his most impactful moments in his earlier years as a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Drafted with the number 2 pick in the 2007 NBA draft, Durant was touted as a transcendent player coming out of the University of Texas. He would show flashes of this greatness in his rookie year, averaging 20.3 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, and 2.4 assists, starting all 80 games he played that year on 34.6 minutes a game. While his stats looked good, he was inefficient at times, shooting below 30% from the 3 and having a field goal percentage of 43%. However, he would still win Rookie of the Year easily and made all-rookie first team as well. But looking to make a bigger leap his second year, KD became even more polished, now playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and with recently drafted UCLA star Russell Westbrook as his number 2, he would go off, scoring 25.3 points per game with 6.5 rebounds and 2.8 assists on shooting splits of 42% from the 3 and 48% overall. By this point, the NBA had taken notice that the Thunder had something elite brewing, and a couple years later in 2010, the whole world would be thunderstruck. KD would make his first All-Star game and All-Star appearance that year, upping his scoring average to 30.1 points per game and winning the scoring title as a third-year player, which is unreal. On the backs of Durant and Westbrook, the Thunder would make the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history, and even though they'd be defeated in 6 games in the first round of the eventual champions in the LA Lakers, the Thunder, Kevin Durant, and all the other team members in that Thunder squad showed the NBA that they were up next, and these next 2 years would show just that. For the second consecutive year in 2011, KD led the NBA in scoring with 27.7 points per game and would once again be an All-Star and All-NBA first team. More importantly though, he led his Thunder squad to 55 wins and back to the NBA playoffs for the second consecutive year. Unlike last year, however, this Thunder squad was ready for the spotlight, making it through the Nuggets and Grizzlies to the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately, the result would still be the same as last year in the end, as they would be defeated by the eventual champions in the Dallas Mavericks 4-1. Now, even though they had fallen short of a finals berth, people began speculating that an eventual finals appearance wasn't a matter of how, but a matter of when for this Thunder squad. And that when would come the next year in 2012. Now, if 2011 was the trailer, 2012 was the whole movie. This year, the Thunder put it all together in the lockout-shortened season, with KD winning his 3rd straight scoring title with an average of 28 points per game, and having his 3rd straight All-Star and All-NBA first-team selection. This team looked dangerous, capturing the first seed in the West and looking like an absolute lock to go to the NBA Finals. their opponents would all be former champs, with the Mavericks, Lakers, and Spurs being defeated to grant Kevin Durant his first taste of the NBA Finals. However, just like the path he'd already conquered, the next opponents would easily be the best team in basketball, the Miami Heat. But these weren't the same Thunder that were dispatched in 5 by the Mavs last year. They not only had an all-star and homegrown Russell Westbrook and defensive anchor in Serge Ibaka, but also a young James Harden coming off the bench, making them one of the most elite teams in the league. But this team unfortunately got dispatched in 5 by the Miami Heat, and it's pretty obvious to see why. But despite this, Durant still led all players with 30.6 points and showed that the young star had not yet reached his full potential. While finally being ousted as the scoring leader in the NBA in his next season, he still put up 28.1 points per game and became the youngest player in NBA history to join the 50-40-90 club, leading his Thunder to a 60-22 record and once again being the number 1 team in the conference. Unfortunately, their playoff hopes were derailed after Westbrook tore his meniscus in the first round, and they were bounced in 5 by the Grizzlies in 5 games. Now, looking to finally return to form and return the Thunder back to the finals, Kevin Durant knew that he had to take his game to the next level. He was a perennial all-star and all-NBA first-team selection, but he needed something more. He needed to become the best player in the league, and in 2014, that is exactly what he did. Kevin Durant averaged 32 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, and 5.5 assists, en route to winning his first and only MVP award and giving us one of the most legendary moments in the process. Once again, the Thunder would have a chance to make it to the finals in a rematch with the Grizzlies in the first round, and after going down 2-3 shockingly and critics down Durant's neck, he responded with 36 points in a Game 6 victory and an eventual series win in Game 7. They would unfortunately be defeated by the eventual champion Spurs again, and that really marked the beginning of the end for that Thunder duo. His next year was marred with injury, so he didn't really get to play that much, but in his playing time, he did still show flashes of that amazing Kevin Durant we've seen, and in 2016, he was ready to put it all together and finally take the Thunder back to the NBA Finals. In this season, he went off. And the year that Golden State would win 73 games, yes, the Thunder were not the best team in the league because the Spurs also won an incredible amount of games and was the second seed, the Thunder were still no slouch. Led by Durant's 28.2 points per game, 8.2 rebounds and 5 assists, and 1.2 blocks, the Thunder would win 55 games and settle for the third seed in a very, very loaded West. But after cruising through the first round, they faced a difficult test in the San Antonio Spurs. And after getting blown out in Game 1, a lot of us maybe thought it was over. I'm not going to lie, when I saw them get blown out in Game 1, I thought they were getting swept, but KD took over. They won in 6 games, and they would face the best team in the NBA, the best team arguably in history, the Golden State Warriors. Now, this team seemed unbeatable in every single way. They held the all-time record for wins in a season, and the unstoppable duo of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, not to mention that Draymond Green was also a menace during this time, it just didn't seem like it was possible. But against all odds, the Thunder took a 3-1 lead going into Game 6 at home after losing in Game 5, and they had a very, very good chance to advance to the second NBA Finals in franchise history. And then Game 6 Klay happened. And by the dust settled, the Thunder were in Game 7, KD was playing hero ball, and shockingly, they would fall in 7 games after the Golden State Warriors would come back 3-1 and would deny Kevin Durant his chance at making the finals. And we all know what happens next. We all know exactly what happened. Everybody remembers exactly where they were after this season. I remember exactly where I was when this trade was announced, because their hero, Kevin Durant, the guy who had taken their franchise from basically nothing to perennial finals contenders, had left. They had lost it all. Kevin Durant not only left in free agency, but he went to the Golden State Warriors. For a team that had nothing anymore, for a team that had lost their franchise's only MVP, scoring threat unlike anything and anyone had ever seen, Could anybody pick up the pieces and give the city something to cheer about? Was it even possible anymore? But it was. Because even though they had lost Durant, they still had their heart and soul, Russell Westbrook. Just like Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook was drafted to the Seattle Supersonics with the 4th overall pick in the 2008 NBA draft. However, unlike Durant, he would play his whole career as a member of those Oklahoma City Thunder and didn't actually play for the Supersonics because they would leave literally a week after he got drafted. Now, he was known as a very high motor and electric player at UCLA, and he showed that with a stellar rookie campaign, putting up 15.3 points, 5.3 assists, 4.9 rebounds, and 1.3 steals a game, and on March 2nd, 2009, became the 3rd rookie in the combined franchise's history to record a triple-double. Little did anyone know, that would actually be a sign to come for what Westbrook was truly capable of, but that's in the future. In his second season, and his first as a starter, Westbrook upped his averages to 16.1 points per game, 8.0 assists, 4.9 rebounds, and 1.3 steals. Due to the amazing play of the new duo of Durant and Westbrook, the Thunder would make the playoffs that year, and would eventually lose to the Lakers. But just like Durant, this year would mark a turning point for the young star. He had to up his game, and he did just that. In the 2010-2011 season, he would make the All-Star game for the first time in his career, continuing to up his averages to 21.9 points per game, 8.2 assists, 4.6 rebounds, and 1.9 steals. Unfortunately, they were defeated by the eventual champions in the Dallas Mavericks, but Westbrook still proved that he was on the path to stardom, just like his teammate Kevin Durant. His next season would once again make the All-Star team, and once again had fantastic averages, helping lead the Thunder to the finals for a star-studded matchup against the Miami Heat. Now, this is a matchup they would eventually come to lose, but what's really important is that it established that the Thunder tandem of Durant and Westbrook was real. These guys were next up, and their next season even proved that further. Westbrook would up his averages again to 23.2 points per game, 7.4 assists, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.8 steals, making the All-Star team and showing that his high motor play was incredibly impactful to all sides of the ball. Unfortunately, this return trip would be derailed as Westbrook would unfortunately slightly tear his right meniscus in the first round of the playoffs against the Rockets, keeping him out of the rest of the playoffs, where the Thunder would be defeated in the second round. His next season would also be injury shortened, as several injuries would keep him out weeks at a time. This didn't hold Westbrook down though, as he would return late in the season to help the Thunder advance to the Western Conference Finals once again, where they would be once again defeated by the eventual champions in the Spurs. Now, his 2015 season was very interesting, because it almost gave us an image of what the Thunder would be like if it was Westbrook's team and not Durant. In an injury-filled season for both stars, Westbrook had some of the best scoring games of his career, even dropping 41 in the All-Star game in his first All-Star game MVP award. Unfortunately, his lights-out scoring wasn't enough to lead the Thunder to the playoffs, but his averages tell an entirely different story. He averaged 28.1 points per game, 8.6 assists, 7.3 rebounds, and 2.1 steals in an insane stat line. And with Durant returning for the 2015-2016 season, many thought that this would be the year the Thunder returned to the NBA Finals. And for most of those playoffs, it looked that way, with Durant and Westbrook leading the Thunder to a 3-1, surprisingly, lead over the Warriors, and we know what happens after that, but that's not really important, because like I said, this was the year that Durant left, and what happened after was honestly pretty incredible. Because the Thunder had just passed over the torch to their second son, and who knew what was going to happen? Could they even go back to the playoffs? Were they going to be competitive? Well, Westbrook had other plans, because not only did they make the playoffs, Westbrook became the second NBA player in history to average a triple-double with 31.6 points per game, which led the league, 10.7 rebounds, 10.4 assists, and 1.6 steals, playing 81 games and becoming the second Oklahoma City Thunder player in history behind who else but Kevin Durant to win the MVP award. Now, those who watched this season know how legendary it was. It was like something out of a storybook. A city reeling from losing its best player was just given a generational performance from its second son, leading the Thunder to a 47-35 record and a 6th seed in the playoffs. Unfortunately, even a 37 points per game scoring series wasn't enough to get them past the Rockets, and they would lose the series in 5 games. Even so, the city knew it was in good hands with Westbrook. I mean, the guy had just broken the all-time record for triple-doubles with 42, a record that nobody really thought was ever possible to break. It was Oscar Robertson's record before, and now it's Westbrook. And even so, they would join forces with Paul George and Carmelo Anthony also coming to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and a lot of people thought the next 2 seasons could be a real turnaround. Unfortunately, we know it wasn't the case. Westbrook would actually go on to average triple-double the next 2 seasons as well, but both playoff runs would end in first-round disappointments. And after talks with the front office, both parties decided that it was the best course of action to find Westbrook a new home. And so the Thunder could start an eventual rebuild and their next chapter. But even though his chapter had closed, his accolades had been cemented in gold forever. Now that we've gone over our 2 candidates for GOAT, let's try and figure out which one is the greatest. This one is going to be difficult, and for good reason, as these 2 players will always be tied to each other because they literally played on the same team for the majority of their careers. But let's compare their stats and see what we're working with. They both played similar amounts of time in a Thunder jersey, but Westbrook did play 2 more years, which puts him at 11 seasons over KD's 9. He also is the all-time leading scorer for the franchise and had more All-Star appearances in the blue and orange. Now, Kevin Durant was easily the better player, as he had 5 All-NBA first-team selections to Westbrook's 2 and has 11 more win shares as well. They both have 1 MVP though, so they tie in that category. And this is where I'm going to go a bit off script. Now, I tried to figure out which one is better through stats and metrics, but I realized that a conversation like Westbrook or Durant isn't about metrics, it's about legacies. Kevin Durant was the franchise's star. He was the best player in franchise history. He was their superstar, but he left to the other team that just beat them in the current dynasty, literally taking the easiest path to a championship possible. Like, there literally could not have been an easier path to a championship. And Westbrook did all he could. He stayed, he averaged a triple-double, he won an MVP, he gave the franchise something to be happy about, something to be proud of, and you can almost say on legacy alone, Russell Westbrook is the more favored player because he didn't just take the easy way out and leave. But obviously, if we're talking about just who's the better player, it's obviously Kevin Durant. But if we're talking about legacy, it's probably Russell Westbrook, because KD's legacy will always be tarnished by the fact that he left to go to play for the Golden State Warriors. So this one, I'm honestly not sure. We're going to leave it down to a poll. Remember, if you go to the community tab on my channel, you can see the poll there and you can vote for yourself. But who do you think is the greatest player in Oklahoma City Thunder history? I personally say Westbrook just because of his legacy, but you could easily say Durant. And thank you guys for watching. I know it's been a while since the last video. We're going to be back to normally your regularly scheduled uploads. NBA season has started. Going to be dropping some more videos about that. But thank you guys for watching. Take it easy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.